one that just launched is the Core Credential. And the Core Credential gets into kind of the, between the what and the how, because it kind of deals with a little bit of the what and a little bit of the how. It doesn't quite take you to the stage of implementation, but it takes you to the stage of recognizing barriers within the environment and identifying even solutions within the environment. But it doesn't ask you to go off and design those. It asks you to recognize them within the environment. So if you know anything about UDL, UDL is focused on overcoming the unneeded barriers within the learning environment. And it gives you a frame of reference as a framework, a scientifically valid framework for looking at and supporting the design of environments that overcome the unnecessary barriers within the environment, right? And so in the second micro-credential, what you do is you go to within case studies and identify where barriers may be within the environment for the contextualized understanding of the kids in that environment. Now, what's coming very soon within Learning Design is the third micro-credential. And the third micro-credential is the Practitioner Credential. And we're working on that. In fact, there was a meeting just a few minutes ago. There's a meeting just a few minutes ago with various researchers and people all over the nation that are going through this process of designing and validating these micro-credentials. So the important thing is these credentials are there. You can obtain them on your own, or you could take a course. There's a class being offered, in fact, today and one tomorrow on the Associate Micro-Credential at this conference. So, like I said, we have the curated content, networking and sharing. But the other thing that most people, how many educators do we have in the room? Everyone? How many school building leaders? District leaders? Coaches? How many higher ed folks? Vendors? Anyone? Huh? Okay. And county, yeah, county offices of education. Okay. Did we forget anyone? The other thing that it does is Learning Design enables you to set up your own personalized learning plan. So just as we've talked about personalized learning in education or individualized learning in education, we know that the variability that exists in all learners exists within us because we're also learners, right? So it enables you to personalize the process of professional learning. We know that some people in here like to self-study. Some people in here could probably pick up a book and kind of understand a majority of the things they need to do. Other people want to attend courses or go through a facilitated session. And Learning Design allows for that to happen. Are there any questions right now? Let's do a little bit of a live engagement. I think it's a live mocked engagement here, right? This is what we're doing? Yeah. So just so you know, I'm filling in for a colleague of mine that had to take off in an emergency. And he's normally the one that does the demos. And I'm not a demo sort of guy. So we're going to do the best we can here. So here's what you can do. If you have your own computer, if you have your own computer or an iPad or even a phone, you can simply go to learningdesigned.org. And the quickest way to sign up is just go to register and sign in. Quickest way to go is register and sign in. Is it pulled up on here? So you can drive if you want, actually. Are you good? Because you're going to show a little bit of it later anyhow. So Sung's going to show a little bit of it. But if you pull up to Learning Designed, it looks like this. Do you want to talk?
Here we are on the front page of Learning Designed, and here it is, create a free account today. And if we go there, we have a sign up. With the email, it will go to your email, so we will have to validate that we are able to receive that, and through that process, we will be able to register an account. But if we would please enter in our information and then create a new account and then go to your email to receive the validation email to register.
So what's critically important in Learning Designed is it's a little bit different than, well, it has a lot of built-in networks. It's not the same as going to a Facebook or going to an open platform like Twitter. What we're creating within Learning Design are really structured and professional networks so that people can engage with one another and support each other in things like PLCs, et cetera. And, but they're closed. They're closed networks, so the validation is critically important.
And that's where we can really build on each other and network when we have the people search with our profiles in there and having those learning groups together so that we can have that network improvement community going on, and we'd be able to say, hey, well, like we're learning on this together and we're implementing this, and being able to build on each other's experiences. So it's really, we encourage it, but if you can, please have your profile appear so that we can be a learning community together.
Or are you going to show them around later? Or do you want me to do it later? As you're working throughout the session here, doing little activities, the first thing you do is obviously register. Obviously, it's a pretty simple thing to do, but if you don't have time to register here today or you're not with a computer, you can do this later on. But what this gives you as a registered user, it's free. It gives you the ability to go and identify resources, bookmark resources that you believe are important, and join communities that you see. So if people are part of the, for instance, CA1 has a space in there, and it is an access point for everything California 1. So if you're interested in California 1 or you're part of California 1, that's just an example of everything that's being housed there. So the individual accounts establish what we call My Hub. And the concept of My Hub is quite simple. As educators, people are throwing things at you all day long, right? Oh, we have this initiative, we have this initiative, we have this thing that we're doing. And sometimes what you're thinking is, okay, that's great, I just need to survive tomorrow, right? How do I get through tomorrow? How do I find the resources I need to support the young man or young woman that I was dealing with today? What the individual account provides you is a means to catalog those resources and find those resources. What's coming forth within Learning Design is the ability for you to have a dashboard for all of your other initiatives, everything going on. And in fact, in My Hub today, if you're a California 1 participant or you're part of another initiative that's using Learning Design, it's all housed in My Hub. So it's a one-stop shop for everything around your professional life. On top of that, you have all the resources that are available to you to support that. Then you can also do searches. Are we recording? I'm supposed to stay in the box? Oh, I'm stuck in the box. But you can see at the bottom here, you can obviously set up your profile. We'll talk about that in just a minute. You can bookmark things. You can, I can't even read that, so if someone else. But you could do lots of things. You can identify various initiatives that you're in. The other thing you can do is if your county office of ed or your district is involved in Learning Design, they can establish coaching relationships within Learning Design so that you can establish goals. How many people are coaches? We asked that already. There's only a few in here. How many people have a learning coach that they work with in their school or their county? Just a few. Okay. What Learning Design allows is for those coaching relationships to very much be personalized towards you and for you to help support, whether you're a coach, you're supporting individuals and teachers that you're working with. And if you're a teacher that has a learning coach, you're working with your coach on a continual sort of basis for continuous improvement. And there's a system within Learning Design that helps you support that through establishing goals, through establishing meetings, and even whether you're supporting a face-to-face or even an online meeting, you can do that through Learning Designed. Are there any questions? That either means we're putting people to sleep or we've answered everything for you. I don't know which one it is. Yes? Yeah.
Can you go back to Practitioner Credential and talk a little bit
Yes.
more about what that credential, how to get it, what
Yeah.
that means,
Yep.
and how it fits into this?
Yeah, I'm just going to check. Are you guys going to go over the credentials in your talks? Okay. Okay. That's right, and actually work towards the associate credential. So the credentials are pretty simple and straightforward to obtain. Once you get into Learning Design, if you go to the Credentials tab, it'll take you through the 2 credentials that are there. Like I said, the first credential is pretty simple. The first credential is pretty simple, and we launched that actually last year at the Inclusion Collaborative. And the first credential is about the why of UDL, and that's the simplest one. And you can quickly just go there, click on Learn More, and walk through the process of what the credential is all about. And it takes you step by step how to obtain the credential. How to obtain the credential. In fact, what you're supposed to know, and it actually in a very UDL sort of fashion. We always want our learners to understand what the goal is and what they're being measured against. So the rubric is also located right there. So you know exactly what the rubric is. Just like, again, the idea that we want to model in this online system the very thing that we're trying to help support in implementation. And so that's there, and there's also some hints and clues for you. We can then go down to, and there's actually a course that you can, and I'm looking for it here, the screen is, that you can actually self-pace, you can go through the course itself. So this is a free resource that's available on Learning Design for educators to go through a self-paced module or course on the level 1 credential. And so you can go and go through that on your own. And it'll take you right into the course if we clicked on it, went through it. The next credential is, like we said, the level 2, the Core Credential. And the Core Credential kind of moves beyond the why of UDL into the essential components associated with UDL. And so, for instance, part of my job is a teacher educator. So half my job, as I said, is at the University of Kansas. The other half is at CAST. And so all of my pre-service educators are receiving both credentials this semester. So, and we've had a number of other institutions that are saying this is going to be the standard. This is going to be the standard for pre-service education. We also have, and I'll talk about this in just a minute, places like county offices of ed that are sponsoring their educators in receiving these credentials. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But this will go, again, through the means for getting the credential, including the knowledge statements that are measured in this, and you go through different scenarios. And so the way the second one is done is through a case study. So after you think you have an understanding, to receive the Core Credential, you can then go through the evaluation process. And the evaluation process for the Core Credential is around a series of case studies. You choose the case study you want to work with, and then you go within the system and identify, where the barrier, how did they align to UDL in their practice, and where are things that they should iterate on? What should they change? What should they move forward? And so that's freely available. Now the one that's coming out is a Practitioner Credential. And we're not quite ready to announce all the ins and outs of that credential, except for the fact it's around practice, right? So you're going to have to demonstrate your understanding through practice, as in most of the competency-based micro-credentials out there. Now what's different about our credentials within Learning Design from what you see in Bloomboard and other sort of groups is ours have been validated. And it's not just one group. It's not just CAST doing the validation. We have teacher educators and researchers throughout the nation that are helping support the process of validation. In fact, Sung was part of it. I don't know if Placer did any of the validation Sung was part of the, you did the core, right? Part of the core validation sort of process. So what we've done is we've put these things up for other people to beat up a little bit, if you would, and then ensure that they have some sort of rigor to them and that they actually mean something. Because here's the other thing that's important about Learning Designed is there's a directory. There's a people directory that can identify, if you so choose, you can put your bio forward, and it shows your credentials that you're associated with. So what it allows people to do is search for people that have credentials. Now, some of the things that are forthcoming is you can imagine if your school district is looking for people that have UDL credentials, they should be able to go in and find those people that are looking for a job that also have the UDL credentials, and these are things that we're moving forward on within the system. You can also look for districts and or organizations that are involved within UDL, not only in the US but beyond. So like we said, the resources in there are global, from across the globe. In fact, some of the finest resources that have come out are out of New Zealand. Core Education in New Zealand puts out some great resources on UDL implementation. And we want, the whole purpose of Learning Design is to support the growth and implementation of UDL. So in that process, what we want to do is recognize the leadership not only locally, but across the globe in those areas. But they're also vetted. This is not teachers pay teachers. I love teachers pay teachers to a certain extent, right? But how many people use teachers pay teachers in the room? Come on, really? There's more people that do. Like, I'm not going to read my hand that. Teachers pay teachers is great when you find a great resource. But oftentimes, I know I've used it, and I've been working with school teams in the implementation process, and one of the teachers will pay some money for what they think is going to be a great resource. But in reality, it's not what it was advertised as. Has that happened to anyone here ever? Yeah. And so what we want to ensure is that doesn't happen in Learning Design. And so our resources are cataloged and vetted. Our resources are cataloged and vetted. So there's kind of a peer review process. And in fact, if you find a resource that isn't what it says it is, there's a way to report it. There's a way to report it to us. And we will deal with it on the back end. So it is a great resource library for any number of things, from day-to-day sort of classroom supports, to school-wide implementation supports, to district-wide implementation supports, or county supports. So here's one thing you can do. If you're in there right now, you can just simply click on resources. Find a resource you might want to bookmark. And then you can go into, if you've signed in, you can go into your hub, and that bookmark's going to be there for you. Now, as you do searches within Learning Design, and you start looking for things in Learning Design, eventually what will happen over time is when you come back to Learning Design, it's going to recognize you, and it's going to make suggestions of resources you might want to have. So if you're continually in there and you're looking for math resources or science resources or reading resources, eventually what's going to happen is Learning Design is going to offer you the resources that are suggested for you, and obviously you can change that based on your own needs. But the idea is we want to make professional, personalized learning as simple as possible for the educators that are on the ground, because the folks that are in the classrooms every day are extremely busy. So we want to make sure it's easy for you. The other thing you can do is if you're an administrator or you run an initiative, you can share resources, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about that here just in a few minutes. Are there any questions about any of the resources? Yeah, there's hundreds upon hundreds of resources. In fact, one of the bigger issues we're trying to deal with now is what we call this search taxonomy on the side. And we're actually trying to do continuous improvement in that process, and so we're going to make that a lot simpler for people to use. We're going to make that a lot simpler for people to use. Has anyone found a resource they want to share with us that they said, wow, it wouldn't, yeah.
the Sanger Learns instructional resource website.
Yeah.
So as teacher, well, I'm in special education, we worked on that all together to create that. But it's a great resource as far as like for me for writing IEP goals based on standards,
Right.
because it gives the barriers, it gives a baseline, and then to build them up to the rigor.
That's right.
So and it can get confusing. It's a huge resource.
That's well, it's good to know it's there.
Yeah.
And if you have ways to improve it, you should. We can help facilitate that if you'd like. That's good. Any other resources people want to share? One of the things that comes to my mind, I was at Matt's session. I had to step out earlier. If anyone saw the PLC session that took place just before lunch, there's a number of resources in there for supporting UDL-based PLCs. So if you're looking to set up a PLC, it's there for you, and there's a lot of resources for doing that. There's a lot of resources there for working towards implementation. So any other conversation around what sorts of resources there? What sorts of resources would be helpful to you? So I know earlier someone was talking to me they need a UDL 101, and there is in the Associate Credential a course that will take you through the basics of UDL. What are some other resources that would be useful? Yeah? Here's a mic coming around so we can talk to people online.
I use Teachers Pay Teachers for practical, like I need this for science and special ed. So
Yeah.
like I have 6 subjects. So I like that pre-packaged, and I'll add a YouTube video to supplement it, the multimedia aspect. So it'd be nice to have like research-based, from your website, like practical teaching packages that
Yes.
we can use multiple ways of representing the material in a nice link.
I love that idea.
All
I
right.
love that idea.
There you
Here,
go.
and I'm going
Sorry.
to show you something so that everyone's aware of it as well. As we're focused on continuous improvement within Learning Designed, one of the things you'll see right here on this tab is a Provide Feedback tab. As you're looking for something that you're either not finding or you just say, hey, I have a suggestion. I wish this was blue and not red, or whatever it might be. If you click on that feedback tab, that goes right to us, and it goes right to our developers. And we have actual weekly meetings that we go through each thing that comes in and review each thing. And then oftentimes, if we go down the page here, oftentimes you'll get an email back from us that actually, if we want more information or to provide you, that's a great idea. We should look for these things. Do you have any other suggestions? That sort of thing. Do you want to be engaged a little bit more? So that's there for you as well. The other thing that you can enable through our colleagues and friends at Texthelp is you can actually have the Texthelp Toolbar right there. And if anyone's not seen the Texthelp Toolbar, it's absolutely amazing. So it can help with screen reading, but it can also do things like change languages. So sometimes I was working with a teacher just about 3 weeks ago in an ESL classroom, and she was needing content. She was needing content on UDL to explain to her parents. And so she found it within Learning Design and was able to help translate it directly right there. It also gives you the ability to highlight and do other things. And if you don't want that, you can just go ahead and turn it off, and it'll go away. Okay? Any other questions right now? Comments about resources, etc. And I'm taking up my time. I've gone, I think, a little bit past, so I'm going to kind of move along here. Now, this is something that I think is amazing, and one thing that we thought about in the design process is that as educators, we belong to multiple organizations. You may have a county office of education, you have a district, you have various initiatives within these organizations. And what Learning Design allows for you to do is to belong to those many organizations, but yet be an individual within those organizations. So it helps associate and work through the various initiatives. Again, the idea is for us to work smarter, not harder, right? Work smarter, not harder. And so from that perspective, as that we have many educators in the room, what this helps you do is manage your professional life. Really manage your professional life to say, here's all the different groups that I'm working with. I'm working with my county office in education in California 1. I'm working with my district office in the MTSS initiative. I'm working on an equity initiative for this district. And all those things could be housed directly in Learning Design, and it goes into your personalized learning plan. So if California One Initiative wants you to obtain micro-credentials, you can go ahead and get those micro-credentials, and they're supported through California One. But they can be aligned with the equity initiative going on in your own district or the MTSS initiative going on in your own district. So it really provides a way for districts and educators to work professionally together and to support the professionalism in the field. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jill and the outstanding work going on up in Placer County.
I think I have to step in the box. We're all getting used to that. Are you using what to advance? Just the arrow? Yeah, you can use the clicker. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm from Placer County. Does everybody know where Placer County? Anybody know where it is? I guess that's my first question. Not a lot of folks know where we live. We actually live. We're not Placerville. We're actually the other side of 80 going up towards Tahoe. But we are kind of the Roseville, Rockland area all the way up to Lake Tahoe. So this was a fun commute down here yesterday. I lived in San Mateo for a long time, and that was probably 20 years ago. I don't know how you survive this traffic down here. It's pretty amazing. So I'm going to just shamelessly talk a little bit about this project and intersect it with how we're using Learning Design to kind of support some of our needs in doing this project. But it's also a project I just wanted to make sure we're getting the word out to folks that it exists, because it's a great opportunity for some of our regional agencies, which include our SELPAs and our county offices, to take advantage of some resources that are going to be coming out over the next 4 years. So open access is part of the statewide system of support. Are all of you guys familiar with that new emerging system that California is creating to help support our districts who have intense needs, particularly around supporting our students with disabilities? One of the projects out of there, California One, is part of the equity portion of that statewide system of support. But one of the things they rolled out last year was they asked for 4 different SELPAs to apply. They asked for SELPAs across the state, but they awarded 4 different SELPAs content lead grants. And what they basically asked is, if we're going to support changes with our students with disabilities, what would be some content areas that we should focus in that will give us the most bang for our buck in terms of really helping school districts solve some of these really big problems. So we were very fortunate to be awarded one of those grants. Our focus is on access. And for us, that really is laying that foundation that until we start making sure that we make access to quality curriculum and participation and active engagement with learning possible for our students with disabilities, we're not going to see the progress that we need to see across all of our measures that we're looking at. So our project is focused in 3 different areas. We're focused on implementing the principles and practices of universal design for learning for all students. But we also have projects that are focused on incorporating digital tools and assistive technology into the design of instruction and measurement of learning. And I'll talk a little bit about that project specifically in a couple of minutes. We do that through a UDL lens. We've really shifted our service delivery up in our region, up in our county, and up in our regional area, which includes about 12 other counties, to being one of more a universal design approach, where if we can get tools and technology into kids' hands before we have to actually move up the tiers and do assessment and do IEPs, then we're just going to make a bigger impact for everybody. We also have a project that's focused on AAC. And again, we've kind of shifted our AAC practices in our region to be more of a tiered system, where all teachers and assistants and service providers have a certain level of training. All of our SLPs in our county receive a tier 2 level training so that they can provide the majority of tools for the majority of students. And then we have a tier for our AAC specialists who support everyone down the pike. So as part of the grant, all of us were looking at, are required to look at sharing out universal resources as well as doing some specific project work. So open access, we do have a website, and I just shared that handout with you. But we also decided to really partner and work with the Learning Designed site as another avenue for getting resources and information out to people, and to also use that site to support some of the coaching and training activities that we're doing as well. We also are really leveraging the credentialing throughout our 2-year commitment with districts, when we're going to walk through with them through UDL, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Because we want to make sure, and I think that's one of the really nice features of that, is that we're all working consistently towards the same benchmarks. We're all focused on helping teachers learn basic core concepts and basic core information that's going to help them all be consistent in their application and practice. So that was really important for us. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the universal resources in just a second. We'll also talk a little bit about the projects. Our project is really focused on supporting what we're calling regional lead implementation teams. So we're looking to counties and SELPAs to support them, and how are they going to build and support capacity in one of these three areas to meet the needs for all of the districts in those areas. So within our project, we're going to be identifying over the next 4 years up to 8 regional lead teams to support UDL. We have 3 of those now starting up in our North State region, way up North California, where they don't have a lot of resources to support that work. And we have another team starting in San Luis Obispo. But we're looking to bring in at least 4 or 5 more teams over the next 4 years. We're also going to be working with 6 regional lead teams to support assistive technology through that UDL lens model, and 6 regional lead teams to support AAC for our students with really complex communication needs. The other area we're focused on, and I think this has been a really exciting time for us the last 6 months to start making all these connections with other people across the state. Some of that has been including working with Sung and Kathy here in Santa Clara, and with James McKenna down in LA. And we are forming a California UDL coalition that's just in the initial stages of development. We're modeling this after the PBIS coalition. If any of you have been involved in the PBIS coalition work, we're trying to emulate a very similar model where there will be networking opportunities. Go ahead. Did you have a question? That's the goal. That's the goal. So right now it's starting out with just regional networking, and that's building off a county office of education network that was already established, where folks can just become part of that larger network. They've been doing monthly webinars and meetings and conversations across the state. The next phase of that will be looking at how do we make sure regional capacity support, technical assistance and support, is consistent across the state, like PBIS has accomplished. So what does that really mean? If you're going to implement UDL, if you're going to implement it based on implementation science, what will regional teams align themselves around in terms of practices and resources to do that? So that's definitely the goal. One of our most exciting, I think, things that have come out of this conversation so far is that we were able to convince the UDL IRN Summit to come to California this year and in the following year. So if you haven't heard that, I think there's a slide in here that will make sure you know the dates for that. So have any of you had the opportunity to go back to, I think you've been in Florida the last 2 years, 2 or 3 years, which I've had the opportunity to do for a couple years. It's an amazing conference, a really UDL-rich conference in terms of even in the experience of the conference itself. So that will be here in the Bay Area in the spring this year, in April, and the dates are on a slide coming up. So they'll be here for 2 years, kind of seeding that statewide opportunity for all of us to network and work together. And then from there, the network will figure out what to do next to keep that going. So you guys all have a handout that kind of will get you to the website. Just want to make sure you bookmark that. If those are 3 areas of any interest to you, come back. We're just starting to get resources up there, but we'll be putting a lot more of them up there, and we'll also be working through the vetting process of Learning Design to get resources up on that platform as well. You can join our organization. So I don't know if you navigate back to that Learning Design screen. There's a tab that says People. What is it? People? people. And under there, you'll find organizations where you can find your organizations. You can also ask to join other organizations. So if you're interested in getting into any of our initiatives that are set up there, you can just make that request, and I will certainly give you access if you're interested. I don't know how much time we have. I'm not going to spend time to go here, but I did just want to direct you, if you're interested, to one of the resources that's already up on our website, and it's indicated here where you can find it. These are toolkits, basically, that we're developing for each of our 3 projects. We provide a lot of scaffolds and resources as part of these projects, so that when we're working with teachers, when we're working with teams, we're not asking them to go out and search for things. These all pretty much align to the digital supports that are available in all 3 areas. And what we do is spend a lot of time curating things, putting the links up to websites, making sure you have access to how to get more information about each of these tools, and we have them organized either in relation to how they fit into UDL or how they fit into more of an assistive technology framework in terms of areas of need, or how they fit into communication. So feel free on your own to go ahead and explore those. Those will be updated regularly. I'm just going to talk really briefly about the 3 projects, but really this is an opportunity. If you know anybody who'd be interested, just make sure to connect them to me, and I'd be happy to fill them in with any more detail. Our Leading and Coaching Towards UDL project is a 2-year commitment to these regional teams. We're really aligning these to the CAST implementation phases. Our goal is to really support developing regional implementation teams who can support regional implementation specialists who can support districts. So our focus is on those individuals who are going to do this work moving forward. And we're going to do that work in alignment with how implementation science works. So there's a lot of consideration around how you're building the systems and supports. We use the regional capacity assessments and some of the tools from implementation science to make sure that as we're doing training with teachers, we're also building the systems that are going to support them in doing this work, and to make sure that that's all in alignment. Our goal is to really work with teachers through a 2-year kind of exploration to their early installation with UDL practices. So along the way, they'll be earning those first 3 credentials over a 2-year process. So we're really aligning the hands-on work we're doing with training and coaching with those teachers to make sure they're getting those critical components, and that they can demonstrate them with competence and with confidence as well. Our Accessible Curriculum for All project, that's really to shift AT service delivery. So we're looking for regional teams that already do AT work, but they're facing kind of the challenges we were having with that work, which is capacity. The more you do it, the more kids have needs, and the more you overwork your staff. And not a lot of it gets implemented down in the ground, because you also need to be making sure you're training the teachers and the classrooms that are working with that technology. So we're really trying to address those issues in there by making this a real connection between ed tech and AT. So there's a real focus on making sure that if we meet the needs of most kids with the tools that are available to all kids and do that through a UDL lens, we should be able to meet more kids' needs. The AAC project, that's a 3-year project. We really try to build up capacity around all 3 tiers, making sure that there's AAC specialists in the region who can support all SLPs who are working with these kids day in and day out, and that they're in turn really supporting the teachers and the providers who support those kids all day, every day. And then this is our shameless plug for the summit. So if you don't have that down in your calendars yet, make sure you do. This is going to be a twice-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have it here in California, and you really don't want to miss it. So make sure you get that on your calendar and plan to attend, particularly because it's right here in your particular region. And I think that's all I have, James.
Yep. I think Sung is up next to talk to us about the different initiatives and projects going on associated with Santa Clara County.
What's great about Learning Designed is that as an organization, you can have a hub and have your initiatives, in this case, or your projects, housed on Learning Designed. So for all your team members, for everybody who you would like to be part of your team, learning together, collaborating together, we can have that one centerpiece. And we are trying to make it, again, be networked and be that community of learners together. So we have two initiatives on Learning Design. We have the California One, and then the fast track to the California One. Right here at this conference, this is a California One event. It's, along with it being an inclusion conference, it's also an equity conference. And for the California One, it actually is the California Equity Performance Improvement Program. And Dr. Shirley Weber, who gave a little mini keynote in the morning, she wrote the legislation for this CPIP. And we are delighted that she was able to come. So the core goals was that we would ensure comparable high academic achievement and other positive outcomes for all students on all achievement indicators, ensure equitable access to educational services and inclusion to all students, and ensure equitable treatment for all students. These are great goals, and in our naming, California One, we try to reflect that. In education, especially public education here in our state, we're so often resigned to, well, we're California, we're 39th, or we're 46th or 48th, and so forth. And it's like, yay, we're not last place. Well, we're the Golden State. Let's strive to be number one. Let's be California One. Also, we're trying to get to the California way of one system for all students. So one team, one system for all students. So again, California One. Also, it's a lovely highway. So might as well take advantage of that. So California One again. So there's a lot of multiple meanings that we can take from it. And that's where we take California One. And as we see for the badge of it, it's all about continuous improvement. What can we do to improve our equitable practices? For our California One, we have a huge partnership. And this is just our Equity Coalition and our partner LEAs for our 2-year project. And as we see, we have a Black Education Network, we have CAST, we have assembly members, we have a publishing company, we have higher ed, San Jose State, we have many great partners here. So just as the Core Credential and the other micro-credentials that are part of a larger initiative, and not just from one organization, but from many people coming together, we're trying to do the same thing for our California One. And it's not just our Santa Clara County way of doing things, but hey, this is a partnership, and we're bringing a lot together. We've taken a multi-tiered continuum of support approach. And in this way, we're trying to provide multiple entry points, multiple pathways for improving our equitable practices. For Tier 1, it's universal, online. And for our online supports, it's all on Learning Designed. This initiative is completely on Learning Designed. We have our online supports with courses, with coaching, with assessments, with forums. All of that is on Learning Designed. It's our central platform for resources. For Tier 2, it's more targeted. It's our face-to-face. And if you notice with the symbols there, it's a school bus. That's supposed to represent that we'll go to you, or hopefully you'll come to us, but we'll go to you too. And this conference is a Tier 2 activity, face-to-face, coming together. Along with that, every month we hold Equity Institutes. And every month it's a different topic. So just a couple weeks ago, we just had the California English Learner Roadmap Equity Institute. A couple months earlier, we had co-teaching for English learners. We had understanding Muslim students. And we have a whole calendar of monthly Equity Institutes. And just as this conference is streamed virtually, we also stream our Equity Institutes virtually too. So please, I'll have the link up. Sign up for some of our Equity Institutes. We'd love to have you be part of that. And then for Tier 3, we have some more intensive support. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but it's an equity playbook that we are designing with the National Equity Project. Here are our Tier 1 courses, the digital badges that represent competency for our micro-credentials within our California 1. So we started with Vision 1, going to collaborative teams, and we have universal design for learning, supporting English learners, supporting positive behavior, supporting students with disabilities, culturally responsive, anti-bias teaching. We're also going to be adding culturally sustaining teaching and leadership soon. And as you see, we're taking the dashboard colors, going from the red, orange to yellow. And then you can probably guess what critical feature 4, we have green badges there. And we have data-driven decisions using academic data and data-driven decisions using behavior data. Critical feature 5 will be a course revolving around our equity playbook and continuous improvement from there. For our courses on learning design, we have 2 tracks. We have an educator track and an administrator track, because we recognize that if you're an educator in the classroom, you would probably need different supports from an administrator supporting those educators. So in terms of the evidence pieces that are needed, there are differentiated ones, whether you're an educator and administrator. Along with that, there are those coaching groups on learning design so that we can have that learning together. We can be in the same course together. We can have common goals and individual goals and be working towards that. We have stackable micro-credentials. So the digital badges that we just saw, they're just our level 1, and we're developing our level 2 and so forth, just as the UDL credentials are stackable, going from level 1, and then to the associate to the core and so forth. And once again, we have the coaching capacity within learning design. Here's just an example of our tier 2 activities for this year. This is our state conference here. Next month, we're going to have strategic planning to increase access and equity, developing your SIPSA, co-teaching for equity, again, California English Learner Roadmap, impact of equity, intersectionality and disproportionality, African American student engagement in primary and secondary education, providing equity access in literacy skills in the social sciences, how to address equity and access through the master schedule, and then promoting equity for our Latino boys. And again, this is throughout the year. Our tier 3 is an equity playbook. And we're calling it a playbook because we recognize that there are many ways to equity. And it also fits in with our California 1 highway theme, ways to equity. So here, instead of an equity audit, it's a collection of equity resources, reflection, assessment, and action planning tools to get us further along in terms of our equitable practices. And we're trying to make it so that there's multiple access points, whether you're an educator in the classroom, a program lead, a site lead, or someone at the district level, multiple pathways of what can we do? So in that way, it's going to be a collection, a playbook of many resources. And our timeline for this will be that it will be available this summer. For more information, if we go to inclusioncollaborative.org and we go to CA1 CPIP, we can get our calendar of tier 2 activities and other resources. We're also working with Learning Design so that our California 1 initiative page can be open to the public without having being a member within Learning Design. And I have to say, Learning Design is so responsive in responding to this feedback and working together with us and getting us to that point. Along with our California 1, which is from kindergarten to 12th grade, we're expanding it with our fast track. It's how do we get students fast track to success? We put them in quality, inclusive early learning environments. So in that way, we're expanding our highway from K-12 to also include birth all the way to 12th grade to expert learning. For our fast track, we're taking an approach where we're providing technical assistance and resources for facilities, equipment, and professional development with a UDL foundation. So what can we do in terms of UDL practices and implementation for our facilities, for equipment, and for our professional learning needs? So that's just a little bit of what we're doing in terms of our initiatives and how we're taking advantage of Learning Design. And if you have any questions, please just come on up to me or just talk to any one of us here at the conference.
So are there any questions right now? Something you want to see more about, hear more about? Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about professional networking and kind of collaboration. So it makes it easy, Learning Design makes it easy for you to kind of professionally collaborate with colleagues and peers and sign up for groups and individuals that you work with on a day-to-day basis. One example of this is to join, you can just simply click join an initiative. And so we have an example right here. I'm stuck in the box again. But if you find Learning Designed and you search for reaching every student through UDL and Learning Design and click join an initiative, you'll be entered into that initiative. The other way you could do it is you can just join using a member code. And that will get you into a host of resources that are associated with that. And you can kind of see what an initiative is all about. And within that initiative, then you have the ability to converse through discussion boards that are closed to that group. So that's what's critically important here. It's not a feed that's just going to go out to the world. So if you have real questions, this is actually a way for you to engage with us in the Learning Design team in this initiative itself. The other thing you do in a very UDL sort of way is, I know I'm terrible. I get hundreds of emails every day, and many of you probably receive the same. Sometimes you can just simply, it's easier to record what you want to say and ask the question rather than type it all out. And so then one of the nice features within Learning Design is you can quickly turn on your webcam or whatever and say, hey guys, I have a question around the following, or I wanted to get a strand or a conversation going around this. Can you help me out? And it'll load in as a video that's been captioned on your machine. So as an activity, if people want to do this, you can actually go in and join this as an initiative, or snap a picture of it if you don't want to do it right now, and maybe just do it later. So are there questions around this? People want to go ahead and try that? I'm waiting to see if people are doing it. It would have been good. We should have put a QR code. Now it's dawning on me to make this all really simple.
Part of UDL is iteration.
Yes, part of iteration. That's why we always have the support button for providing us feedback. So you can go to the URL, it gives you the steps. Okay, are we there? People are still typing. Now what you're going to see is as people emerge into the initiative, there'll be more kind of activity going on within that initiative. So Steve, who was supposed to be here today, had to leave for a family emergency. He's the one that houses and hosts this initiative. So you have this collaboration space that's hosted by Steve, who manages kind of Learning Design operations. And I know there are people that are going to be actively participating in this. I think this is the first time we've offered it as a group to join for free. So am I good to move on? Okay. Instructional coaching tools. We talked about instructional coaching just a few minutes ago, realizing that not everyone has an instructional coach they're working with, but throughout the nation, many teachers in many schools are working with a team that they're either involved in as a PLC or they're working individually with an instructional coach. In fact, one of the schools I work with, I work with a group that actually has two state award-winning teachers. They've won the state teaching award 2 years in a row. Like one of them won it one year and the other one won it the other year. And it's an amazing group, but they both have an instructional coach and they're on an instructional coaching team because, again, it's about continuous improvement, right? And they're the most amazing group that I sit with on a week-to-week basis because these teachers are having such deep and profound sort of, oh, I just found this as a barrier in my classroom. How do I improve upon that? And so what they're using within Learning Design is a process for cataloging their instructional coaching meetings and being able to then provide support to establish goals. And then we've already talked about credentialing and certification. I don't think we need to go into much detail about that, but it's all there for you to kind of go through. So I'm going to kind of skip ahead if there's no other questions. Well, actually, this is the slide I was getting to. One of the things that's forthcoming, and someone said, so one of the questions we had a little bit earlier, is there a systematic way to implement it in a classroom, right? One of the things we've been working on over the last year and a half is just that, is what is a systematic way, not to implement it in a classroom, but to implement it in a school building. For the last 12 years, we've had buildings throughout the nation and throughout the globe trying to implement and supporting the implementation of UDL. Many of these buildings have come to us and said, we want to be recognized for the work we've done. So 5-6 years ago when we started the learning design process, one of the visions was to launch a credential and certification criteria that support school buildings as they're going through the process of implementation. Now, it could also be a virtual school. It doesn't have to necessarily be a building. This is forthcoming within learning design. We have the initial, and some people in this room have probably seen it. But what we've worked with, again, are people from across the nation and leaders at all levels within the UDL field, from people that are researchers and looking at this from our sort of research conceptual framework to on-the-ground sort of educators, building level principals, and not just building level principals that have obtained the highest marks in UDL implementation, but some of the building level principals that are a year or two into it and that have just gone through some barrier analysis. So what's coming forward on UDL, within UDL in learning design is a building level certification and implementation process. And this process itself provides various pathways for schools. So if you're a school that's just beginning the implementation, you're just beginning to think about how might this impact our school. We may have MTSS, we may have these equity projects, we may be part of the CA1 initiative. But how might UDL change the dynamics of our school? And what we've built is a pathway to allow any school to come on board and say, here's a pathway that we can carve out based on the context of who our learners are, whether we have a large group of learners that speak Arabic, we have a large group of learners that speak Spanish, we have a large group of learners that have significant behavioral and or learning needs, or we're quote unquote, which we laugh about all the time, the average learner, right? Which is, of course, there's no such thing. And so what we've established is a way for schools to come on board and vision themselves forward by establishing a UDL implementation plan that often aligns with school improvement plan. It aligns directly with the school improvement plan. It's been validated. It's been validated, and what it does is it really kind of celebrates the process of UDL. So some schools want to do it because they want to be recognized. We want to be recognized as a UDL-based school. Other schools want to do it because they're in the process of implementing, and they want a pathway forward, and that's what it provides. And schools in the near future, within the beginning of next year, will be able to go through portfolio-based assessment. We'll be able to establish plans to implement UDL in their building, and if they want to do so, get those plans kind of looked at and reviewed by experts in the field that can help support a school as they're going through that process. But most importantly, and this is the thing that's outstanding about the credential, this is the most important part. It provides for continuous feedback, provides for continuous improvement. One of the largest school districts that's implemented for the last 12 years, they've implemented UDL district-wide. Bartholomew Consolidated School District. Has anyone heard about Bartholomew in Indiana? They've been working 12 years to implement UDL. They're probably known nationwide as a premier district. They host tours from across the globe on implementation of UDL at a district level. But yet if you talk to their superintendent, or you talk to George Van Horn, who directs their special ed program, or you talk to the curriculum director, and you say, okay, on a 1 to 10 scale, where do you rate? With 10 being the highest rating you could possibly be in implementing UDL, to 1 being we're just starting. I've never heard them answer above a 7. And here's what's amazing about that. So about 6 months ago, I was talking to George and I said, where do you guys put yourself? He was up in front of a crowd. He said, about 7. I said, you always say a 7. He goes, yeah, but this year, you know what we found out? We missed our bus garage. And I said, talk to me a little bit more about that. Well, we have kids that are being bussed in, and they're coming from their homes, and some kids need to stay after school to work on a project. And to make it equitable for them to have the resources and tools they need, they actually need to stay at school. But their parents don't have a means to come pick them up, right? So a barrier for them was that the bus system didn't allow them to actually get the project done they needed. So we've been working with our bus garage about what that means. Additionally, we found that our personnel that work in our bus garage need support in the learning process themselves. And so we've embedded that into our bus garage. So this year, our target is our bus garage. And that's why I would give myself a 7. And he said this, and I was like, a bus garage, right? I mean, people think about the barriers that exist within our environments that are oftentimes human based in variables. Kids not being able to stay after school to work on a project is a huge barrier. There's other barriers associated with that. So what the credential and certification criteria will do is allow schools to recognize and help support those barriers. And within learning design, what we're doing is providing a process for doing that. The other thing that's emerging is how many people have ever gone out and bought a piece of software that they use in their classroom? Or you've been a district team or a school team that's evaluated software, right? So we get this all the time. People call CAST and they say, what sort of software would you recommend? Like we're going through this adoption process. We're looking for textbooks that are fully accessible. Or we're looking for software that's fully accessible. Or Blackboard just told us they're the best UDL provider out there in their marketing campaign. Is that true? And so what's emerging within the certification process is a means to recognize software and curriculum-based tools that align to the standards of UDL. So we have an initial curriculum product certification that's going to be launching real soon. It's going through the validation process as we speak. And it's been developed with UDL in mind. And so that products are going to be able to come out and be gold, silver, bronze level certified, et cetera, based on how they support all learners within their environment. All learners within the environment. Again, it's going to be voluntary, right? But as districts are looking for products to purchase, as they're opening up a new contract with a place like Blackboard that's going to charge them upwards of $1 million, they're going to be able to look at that and say, are they a product that's certified? And it's going to do the same thing that the other certification does, which is allows multiple pathways. Obviously, not all products that are out there and used in our classrooms are the same. And so we need to allow different pathways for products to go through the certification process. But the basis of all this is it must be accessible. It must be accessible. And so we're going to support that sort of process, and that's coming forth as well. Then the final that we've talked about already are the credentials. We've talked a lot about these credentials. So the credentials are going to continue to increase. The credentials are going to continue to increase. And we've talked about the level 1 associate and the level 2 core. What we're looking for already and what we're building is the practitioner. And this is what I talked to you about earlier. A credential that actually recognizes educators that can implement UDL, And so I think this is amazing because as a person that's been working in this field and supporting UDL implementation for a long time, when you have a conversation with someone that can implement UDL, when you watch someone operate in their classroom, it's an amazing thing. But then the next person 2 doors over can say, oh, I can implement UDL, and it's completely different. So having some sort of valid means by which we can recognize individuals in doing that is critically important. The other thing that's critically important is I think it's going to change the way, as a profession, we look upon ourselves. And that if we can have districts, for instance, look for individuals that implement UDL in the hiring process that actually have that little micro-credential next to their name, it could really transform the job market. We're looking at level 4, which is an instructional coach, a UDL coach provider. So that as districts go through the hiring process for looking at who do we bring in to give a keynote, or who do we bring in to support implementation? Is the person a certified coach? And it's completely voluntary. But those are the things that are emerging in the future. And then we have a number of others that are kind of in the wings. Again, usually some of them have actually come in from the website to say, hey, I have this credential, have you thought about the following? For instance, an accessibility credential, that we can truly have someone that can signify, I understand accessibility and I know how to actually make things accessible, and so that they can be recognized for that. And all of this is housed within the hub area and is transferable to any other open source sort of platform that looks at credentialing. So the other important thing is, I know there's not many building leaders here, but we just had a teacher that saw this slide just actually a few weeks ago, and we received a call. And that is, these credentials cost money to actually take because they cost money for us to evaluate. It takes time, and it takes time to build. So they are for sale. We try to keep them reasonable, and we just essentially build them at cost. But many districts have gone through and purchased codes so that their educators can actually receive them. To the point to where we just had a district in Texas, for instance, just purchased 500 credentials. So they bought 200 of the associate, or 300 of the associate, and 200 of the core credential. And they've already guaranteed that they're going to make sure that all their educators that want to receive the practitioner credential can also receive it. Because it changes and transforms professional learning to something that we just sit and get as you're doing right now, right? To something that actually means something you can actually take with you and show people that you actually can do something. So are there any questions? I think that's really all we have for you today. But we want to take some time for questions. And I know we just pounded a lot of information at you, and I really apologize for that. Yeah?
Is there any research around, like, are you researching the effectiveness of the student academic outcomes with teachers that have the micro-credentials?
The micro-credentials are brand new, so that's not been done yet. But we have for a long time looked at, and there's multiple publications on there on UDL and implementation of UDL. The micro-credentials, yeah, that's not to my knowledge. Especially our micro-credentials, because they just kind of hit the marketplace. But that's a great question. Other questions, comments, concerns, personal problems, places that hurt, places you want sung to hurt. Yeah?
On the product certification, do you have different categories? If so, what are those categories?
I don't know is the answer. We can find out for you, though. Steve leads that effort. And Steve's leading that effort, and we've had industry folks involved in that. And you and I, we can actually talk offline too a little bit about it. Yeah.
Is there a cost involved with that?
There is going to be a cost involved in that. Yes. Again, it's the idea that people can put a seal of approval on their piece of software or curriculum product, and so there's definitely going to be a cost.
What you actually are doing, or it is a seal of approval?
It is going to be a seal. It's going to be very similar to actually, which, by the way, as we look at these certifications, not the credentials, but the certifications, the idea of having a seal that says this product has upheld to this standard, et cetera, and this what this means, and then having a transparent database of all those products. The same thing with the schools. So that schools are going through implementation. How many people have walked in or gone to a building that has a seal that says LEED certified, right? That it's energy-based, energy certified. That's essentially what we're kind of creating. We're kind of creating a means by which schools can be recognized, and products can be recognized for what they're actually doing, right? And the big hope is here, by the way, that this recognition process, because it's a continuous sort of building process, can actually transform the way we think about assessing schools, because you can imagine if a school was UDL certified, maybe it was PBIS certified, maybe it was equity certified, right? We don't want to house all those certifications. We have the UDL certification. But you can imagine within a community that values these things being critically important, and having seals and something within the school itself when someone walks in that says this school is UDL certified or equity certified, and then on the website saying the same thing. Yeah?
How involved is the portfolio assessment for like a site principal? How involved would that be for that principal to get to that portfolio?
To get to the portfolio within the certification itself? Well, that's a good question. The point is that because they can come on board, it depends where they're at in the process. If they want to, we've been implementing for 5 years and we want to receive certification, it's going to be a little bit more involved. If they're just beginning the process, right, in that they're looking to establish pathways for implementation, it's not as difficult because they're just providing a little bit of information. But it aligns very nicely, by the way, with improvement science or implementation science, as we've talked about with Jill here. That process of continual improvement aligns with many other reports they're doing. So what we focused on within our national certification board is working with the principals to say, how much work would this cause you above and beyond what you're already doing for your school improvement plan? And they said, this is perfect. This is actually going to take over my school improvement plan, right? And we're trying to make it really easy for that to happen. That's a great question. I know we're running out of time, and he's trying to get a mic to people too.
Well, it sounds like you've done a great job of taking things that PBIS and AVID have done as part of certification and categories and taking the best of it and going in a new direction. So kudos. How does this play in with NAF and credentials and stuff? How do you compete? How does that all work?
We haven't dealt with that yet. That's another great. You're asking questions I can't really answer
Thank
right
you.
now. But so that's good, and that's good. But yeah, we've not gotten to that point yet. And part of the reason is, so the credentials themselves, there's millions of micro credentials out there. What we're trying to do is create better credentials than anyone else, right? But the certifications, we've not hit that point yet. Yep. Any other sort of questions? Well, we've enjoyed talking at you, I think, is primarily what we did, and we apologize for that. I hate doing that, but we hope we gave you a lot of information. You can catch any of us in the hallway, online, etc., and we'd love to answer questions for you. But please have a great day, and thank you for coming.